So we're back for the review of episode 5 of season 2, Interview with the Vampire. This episode is called Don't Be Afraid, Just Start the Tape. And with this episode, we get the backstory of how Daniel and Louis met and really the beginning of this friendship that has lasted for decades now. And we get to also see that there's more to Armand and more to him and Louis' relationship, and also how Daniel plays into their relationship. So we really get an eye opener on pretty much how all the three of them came to coexist in this relationship in today's time. So the episode opens with Armand and Louis. They're reminiscing on spending time together, and they're breaking into museums and staring up at the sky together, all dreamy like. They're sitting together acting as if, things are good, things are fine. But just the last episode, they were arguing and fighting at the end of it, and now they're acting as if everything is okay. When Louis talks, he is using the term one instead of referring to himself as I. And Daniel thinks that that is indicative of him wanting to distance himself from a hurtful memory. And that is a good thing to point out, because when something is very hurtful, you do kind of want to remove yourself from it so that you don't feel the impact and it's not always so heavy. And Armand leaves as his rare dinner shows up, not knowing that they are dinner. And so, how Armand, feeds on people is that he kind of makes it a chase. So, the goal is for them to be chased down. And if they get to the destination in time, they will be well compensated or they'll be eaten. And Armand, it's kind of like Louis in this way. He doesn't want to necessarily feed on people. So in his mind, he's like, oh, I'm going to feed on the undesirables, like the people who do bad in the world. Like they sell drugs and they hurt people. And Daniel keeps, as this is going on, Daniel is having flashbacks. And he's asking Armand why, not Armand, but Louis, why did Armand save him in 1973? And Louis says it's because Armand could see that he was partial to Daniel. And Armand preserves Louis' happiness even when Louis can't or won't. And Armand knew that Daniel would be fruitful in later times. So we now move to 1973, where Louis goes back to his place with Daniel and he shows him the coffin in his room. Daniel surprisingly isn't weirded out. And Louis presents Daniel with a suitcase saying it's a game, but it's really just a whole wide array of drugs from coke, heroin, probably LSD, PCP, whatever. Louis calls Daniel boy, and Daniel likes that Louis is more darker and gloomy in character now, and he starts to take his clothes off as a way to cheer him up. In a way, it seems like Daniel is ready to get freaky. Like he down for it. The conversation starts mild, but Louis lets Daniel know that he's a vampire, and Daniel don't take him seriously until he show his fangs, and it's like he's scared, but it's like, do you want to get bit? It's almost like Daniel's willing to match whatever freak he think Louis has. He drugging at this time, so it's I guess he's living YOLO. He puts the tape in, he starts recording, and Louis begins giving him his backstory. Daniel in real time says that Louis was lonely, and that was why he was so eager to divulge everything. Daniel wants the truth, like in real time, because he feels like he's an accessory to Malik's death, who is Armand's current lunch. So we are still in 1973. We go back to 1973. And Louis is just trashing Lestat. I mean, talking cash money shit about this man. They are both drunk and high at this point. And Louis is saying that Lestat, he played music with no feeling and all this shit. Like he was frail. He had really nothing going on for himself. And Daniel says that Lestat lured him in. And because Lestat was his first love, he paid the ultimate price for his first love. And that's a good point, because essentially Louis was intrigued and he did fall for Lestat before he became a vampire. So I do believe Lestat kind of was his first love, especially the first person that he could be full out with, like really full out with the understanding that, yes, I want you in this romantic way, something that men even to today can't really be fully in. So it appears to be morning, and Louis is still talking shit about Lestat, and he's starting to mention Claudia and when she first left, and he was sitting on the bench in Jackson Square, and he decided to stay with Lestat. He said he knew it was the wrong choice not to go with Claudia, and then Daniel's like, and then what? So this just kind of shows that Daniel is just kind of like being a journalist and an editor in this point. Okay, like, oh, then what? Let's keep the story going. Not realizing that this is very heavy for Louis. Louis is telling him something that really is traumatizing. Like, this is something very deep for him. And this is just kind of another story. And Daniel's like, and then what? And that brings Louis out of his fog. And Louis is saying he wanted to sit there and let the sun burn him, and Daniel like, bro, you have the gift of eternal life as a vampire, and you up here bitching and moaning about it. Claudia is in past tense. Like he referenced Claudia in past tense, but Louis referenced Claudia as if she's still living, and I find that that's interesting. That if, even in that moment in 1973, it's still hard for him to reconcile with Claudia not being there. Um, and he's like, give me the gift. I can be your Lestat or your Claudia, but better. And Louis like looking at him like, what the fuck? Like, huh? Like, you not listening to what I'm saying. Like, you just want to be a vampire. You really think this is something good to have just so you can live forever? He's not really paying attention to the pain that Louis is feeling. And the fact that he's like, I can be your Lestat or Claudia, it's like he's just writing them off to little characters that were in Louis' life, not realizing the magnitude of the relationship that he shared with both of them and how that impacted him and what it meant to him. So Louis attacked his ass. He becomes enraged and start draining his ass. So in present time, he's playing the audio and they hear Armand come into the room and stop the attack, him and Louis. Armand comes back in the apartment. Well, no, this is during 1973. Armand comes into the house and see Louis attacking Daniel, and he splits them up. Like, he gets Louis off of Daniel, and it's morning time, and Armand is pissed off as hell because it's like, this is another fuck up that you've done, and here I am having to clean up this mess, clean up the fact that you have exposed yourself to Daniel. So now he knows who we are. And Louis is like, I was just having fun with him. And he has this outburst and he says, because you are so fucking boring. You're dull. Dull nights, dull weeks, dull months, dull years. Everything is dull. He is the world's softest, beigest pillow. And he says the 10 hours that he spent with Daniel has been more exciting than all the years he's ever been with Armand. And bro, that was a blow. That was a blow. And I think it's a reference to the fact that Louis know how to cut a motherfucker with words. He got a mouthpiece on him. He know how to hurt somebody. And that really is the trigger. And I think one of the deciding factors that they do keep Daniel, because Armand is like, that hurts him. But as they go more into this argument, he in Armand's face, like with his tongue out, asking him, are you gonna lick my boots or chop my hands off? And that's a reference to Nikki, pretty much asking him who he's gonna get tonight, Mr. Softy or the Gremlin, like the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Because Armand likes to act like he's so demure, but that motherfucker can get savage. Armand starts um reading Louis down too about how boring he is, and all he does is complain and, oh, nobody ever loved me, and I became a vampire. Oh, when Louis was saying my daddy vamp who groomed me into a little bitch, dog, I was like, he is hitting Armand with these damn the shit he is saying to him. And so Armand is like, and you up here complaining about, oh, it's so hard for me. It's hard for me to kill humans. And he mentions Claudia and calls Louis his daughter, who is my sister, who is my throw pillow. And I think that's kind of in reference to how we first see Claudia and how she goes through these she goes through these different stages, her and Louis' relationship. First, she is like his baby girl, his daughter. And then she's like more like a sister, like Grace. And then, you know, when their relationship is getting strained, she is like a throw pillow, like something just to be around, something just to have. And he was like, and when he wouldn't look at me kindly, he was talking about Lestat. He said Lestat's name 16 times. Lestat, 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 Lestat. It had a bounce to it. Pretty much saying that he kept mentioning Lestat over and over. And Louis was like, but I was talking shit about him. And our mom was like, it was the name. The fact that you kept mentioning that man lets me know that you're not over him. And talking about, oh, Lestat nor Claudia loved you the way that I did. And Louis says, I know. And I wonder what he means by that. Like, what do you mean that him and Daniel both say that? And it's like, Claudia was not ever supposed to be a romantic interest for him. She's not that. So how can you even compare the relationship and the supposed love that you have for him versus what he had with Claudia? Claudia and Louis' love was a much more genuine and true love than what the fuck you and Louis got. So they just they just go back and forth with each other, and we see them pacing. He leaves the room. Louis leaves the room and leaves out another door, going out into the sun in the morning time. Armand sees him and pulls him back in, and we get to the realization in real time where Louis and Daniel are talking, and Louis is realizing that he does not remember walking out into the sun. And Daniel asks him why he doesn't remember, and they both remember something up until that point, and it becomes clear that Armand is now has something to do with them both not remembering this. So we transition back to 1973. We see Armand putting Louis in the bed, and Louis is burnt the fuck up. Like, he just is burnt to a crisp. He is bloody. Like, if there's something at the third degree, those are the type of burns that Louis has. And Armand is kind of standing over him looking nonchalant. And Louis says that he's sorry. And Armand says, well, that's meaningless. And Louis asks about Daniel, and Armand says the boy, and he's still alive. Armand is angry with Louis about his closeness to Daniel, and while he is in the room with Louis, he is torturing Daniel like telepathically, like he's picking him up. He has Daniel sitting in the chair, and he's picking him up and slamming him down on the floor over and over again. And Daniel, in real time, is remembering that as this is happening, he remembers seeing a body on the floor. And the body is a neighbor that Armand saw outside when he had to go rescue Louis. And he tracked him and killed him. You know, no face, no case, no witnesses. So Armand goes into the living room with Daniel, closes the door to the bedroom so Louis can't intervene. Armand is so jealous. Like, he is jealous of Daniel and Louis' admiration of him and being able to hold his attention and getting Louis to confess his secrets. He goes and he tells Daniel that he is the 129th boy. There's been 128 boys that Louis has brought prior to him. Louis lied and told him he was only 5. Daniel is scared as shit right now. And Armand's asking him what makes him so fascinating and how he got Daniel to open up to him. And he's asking Daniel, does he find him boring? And Daniel's like, no, because of course he's scared. And Armand begins to tell him a story about his first memory. He leaves Daniel sitting upright, like literally sitting as if like he's sitting in a chair, but he's not. So you know his knees fucked up. His body starts cramping. He's like, please, just begging for mercy. And Armand is like, no. Armand is mad that this young boy has been able to hold his man's attention. You know, it's almost like even though Daniel's not Lestat, it's another Lestat. It is another man that genuinely has Louis' interest that Armand doesn't ever seem to capture. Daniel is remembering in real time, and he realizes that he was in that apartment for 4 days, 4 whole days. He remembers it now that there was another. He's remembering all this now because there's another room in the Dubai apartment where it's pretty much rocks in there. and it is used as a way to get him to remember more. Daniel and Louis are in there, and he's trying to remember more, and he's remembering Louis asking Armand to put him in the coffin and everything. And so Armand goes into the coffin. Like Louis is screaming for Armand's help because he's in so much pain. And so Armand goes into the room, and he's talking real softly to Louis, but you could tell it's like a I'm pissed off kind of soft. I'm hurt by what you did. And he tells him that he listened to all the tapes twice. And it was all about Claudia and Lestat. And he comes up with the idea that he says that he talked about Claudia, but all of it led back to Lestat. And he feels as if that Louis is talking to Daniel and he's telling him all this shit about Lestat because he wants Daniel to publish it. He wants Lestat to find it and read it and become enraged and come back for him again. And he says to Louis, if you wanted to be freed from this, all you had to do was ask. And we get the undertone that Armand always kind of knows that Lestat is in the back. Like he knows that he will never capture Louis' heart the way Lestat is. He will always be a runner up, always be a rebound to a rebound. And he's like, I know you still love him, and Lestat is who you really want. And you just using this boy as a ploy to get him to come back to you. You just don't have like Louis is holding a lot of hurt and resentment towards Lestat, and I think he is still upset that he himself still loves Lestat. So Armand summons Lestat, telepathically as a way to, I guess, pacify Louis in the moment. And Louis like, no. And I think he doesn't want to talk to Lestat because he doesn't want to deal with all those feelings coming back. And he channels him anyway. And Armand is telling Lestat that Louis is, asking for him. He's hurt himself. And Lestat, he so lovingly calls him Mon cher and asks him if he is hurt and why he is hurt. He tells Armand to tell Louis that he loves him. And Armand refuses to say it because I think Armand knows that once Lestat says that to him and he says it to Louis, then that will be enough inside of Louis for him to just like, it'll be final for him to cut off Armand. Like there will be nothing else left to hold on for him and Armand. And it appears that Armand is desperate to hold on to Louis. And he starts to pull away telepathically, and Lestat is screaming for Louis. And Armand finally gives Louis some of his blood so he can heal. And as he's doing this, Armand looks like he want to break down or something. And Louis tries to say that Lestat is nothing more than his maker, but Armand knows better. He said, you chose death than to be with him. You chose death than to be with Armand. He can't just be your maker. Like you miss him, you miss Claudia, and you chose death than to be with him. And he starts like feeling like, have I not atoned for what I've done in Paris? No, motherfucker, because he's not even who you really wanted. You are not even who he truly wants, and you know that. And it's like you yourself still wanted Lestat, and it's like you couldn't get Lestat, so now you're gonna, I guess settle for Louis, but Louis don't want you. It's like Lestat wants Louis, and Armand wants Lestat the way that Lestat wants Louis, but Lestat does not want Armand. He tells Louis and Daniel to rest. Daniel remembers Armand. This is in real time. Daniel is remembering Armand telling him to rest. They are in the room with the rocks. And he's telling him to rest, and he is wiping his wounds, attempting to lure him into an easeful death. Get the person to beg for it. Like in reference to the earlier episodes. And right when he's gonna kill Daniel, Louis opens the door and tells Armand to stop, to not kill Daniel. because he needs this one to live. And Armand turns around and asks him, "Are you asking or telling him?" And he calls him maître. And Louis says that he's telling him, so he's demanding him not to kill Daniel. And Daniel living will be a testament to their companionship. And he calls Armand Arun. And I think that's so interesting. Like the way that Armand is able to fall into this submissive role, even though he's so powerful, and the way that he will like subjugate himself and give up power is interesting. I think that's like one of his ways to use his power, like make the person feel as if they have power over him, that way to kind of get them off their guard a little bit. So when Louis calls him Arun, it's like a way to remind him of that place that he was in, like that servant subjugated place when he was Arun, but not in a hurtful way, in a way that like, yes, you listen to me, I'm telling you what to do, don't disobey me. And Louis uses this moment to sit with Daniel, and he's giving him encouraging words that no matter what happens in life, he will prevail, pretty much changing his destiny. Daniel is saying that he remembered being told those words by a drug addict in a drug den, and the addict was burned up, not realizing it was Louis. Louis and Armand gave Daniel more drugs and rewrote his memory and left him at a drug bin. And that explains why Daniel is in the pictures with Armand and Louis being, carried away from that hotel that the Talamasca has, and that they gave to Daniel, that he pretty much is using now to build the research and ask questions like, well, how did I get here? What is this? And so what happened was that Armand rewrote Daniel and Louis' memories. And when Armand finally comes back from his lunch, he's asking him, they ask, or Louis asked Armand why he saved Daniel. And Armand repeats the same exact thing down to the word that Louis said at the very beginning of the episode, which was he knew that Daniel would be fruitful in later times, and he preserves Louis's happiness even when Louis can't or won't. And that was just confirmation to Louis and Daniel that Armand did what he fucking did. And I think they both now, this is like solidified their friendship in a way, but also solidified them as a union against Armand, to know that this motherfucker is sneaky. It's like they both already knew it, but this was just a confirmation. This episode was great, as all of the episodes are, but I really love the backstory that it gave us on how kind of Daniel, Armand, and Louis get into this Three Musketeers type of relationship, but it's like it's a trio, but then it kind of feels like two best friends and a third wheel. And Louis is always the center of the best friends, but the third wheel and the best friend with him can either be Daniel or Armand, and then Daniel and Armand take turns being the third wheel throughout this entire process. So if you like this, just if you like this review, like the video, and not only that, just get down in the comments and tell me what you liked about the episode, or what you might have called or perceived differently than what I did. And thanks, and we'll be back for episode 6.